Kanata ponders upon a question: what would he and his friends would do if they get transported to another world? He says that they would probably rejoice at getting a second chance at life. He says that, being said, picking up streaming as a hobby was definitely not recommended because a situation might be created that would be very hard to understand and get a hold of. It is the end of school, and the students say goodbye to their teachers and leave. Kanata thinks about how he is finally home, and therefore, it is now time for another stream. He opens up his camera and begins to stream. He says hello to his listeners and asks how everyone's day was. After this, he decides to start the chat and advice segment. A man comes on call, introducing himself as Akuta. He tells Kanata that he is a B-rank adventurer. He tells Kanata that the other day some guy had joined their party, and that he was so bad that he could only use supportive magic to scout enemies and repair their weapons. He continues, saying that as their leader, he took initiative and kicked him out. He tells Kanata that he had actually felt great watching him cry. Kanata gets upset and asks if the man is stupid. He says that his tone was inappropriate and asks if he talked to everybody the same way. He continues, saying that scouting magic helps avoid monsters and that he would actually save on having to go to a repair shop. He asks if he understands how useful that skill is. Akuta tells Kanata that if he ends up in trouble during one of his adventures, it would be because he did not have any support magic to rely on. Kanata says that he doesn't care if he is a god or a king. He gives some advice, telling him that if he did not have proper judgment, he should resign right now. He asks if he wants to leave until everybody is dead. Kanata tells him that he should get on his knees and beg for the party member to come back. Kanata wonders if he had gotten through to the caller or not and thinks about how he would rather not die early. He decides to go over the next letter. The letter says that it was written by a man who was a son of an upper-class family, saying that he was engaged. However, he had fallen in love with a cute transfer student and was thinking of choosing her instead. Upon reading this, Kanata begins to feel very frustrated, thinking that he hopes that the man dies and that she ends up marrying Kanata instead. He asks if the caller had thought about the family or if he understood that this was not a matter that should be taken lightly. He continues, saying that he should work on gaining his family's trust first and that he should not choose people just based on looks. He asks if the caller realizes how lucky he is, as Kanata himself would love to have someone in his life as well. Kanata begins to feel tired, thinking about how that was enough and that he will see all of his audience the next day. He lies down in bed, thinking about how this must be what streamers felt like in previous lives. Kanata was a transfer student. The next day while in class, he's being taught about magic. He thinks about how he had been living in this world for a while ever since he had been reincarnated. He remembered being ecstatic when he had found out about the existence of magic. But now, after so long, it did not feel like something special. After all, he had unlimited power. Kanata quickly realized that this power would affect his daily life. He took the magic ranking exam and obtained ranks. Currently, he stared at an S rank and got to enroll in the Royal Academy, which was only for the richest nobles and most powerful commoners. However, all the other students around him did not accept him, saying that he did not belong to any family. It seemed that nobles did not seem to like commoners very much. No matter how hard they try it, they could not change their social status. He decides that the best option that he has right now was to just stick it up and be polite for now. Anytime he faced trouble, he just turned to the teacher. In violin class, one of the students turns around to him and asks what he had said. Before Kanata can say anything, the teacher intervenes, saying that if they had time to talk, then they had time to perform. While they're talking, a girl enters. The teacher asks Maria if she is probably too busy helping around the house, and therefore it is fine, and she should not worry as nobody would blame her. Maria thanks him for his kindness. He then asks her if she is interested in performing today, and asks what she thinks about that. One of the other students steps up instead, saying that he will do it. He tells everybody that he just has to aim for magic at the target, to which the teacher agrees and tells him to give it his all. He continues, saying that he had placed a fireproof seal on the surroundings. He uses his fire magic and is able to hit the target. The teacher decides that they can allow one more person and tells everybody that it is time for Kanata to participate. Kanata steps forward and uses his magic. It is stronger than he had expected, and he's able to blow the seal up. The teacher tells them that that was a splendid display of power that they had just witnessed. He shows the students the remains of the target, which are very minuscule. He then tells everybody that it was time for individual training, to which all the students say that they have no motivation. One of the boys tells Kanata that he thinks that he is just a poser and that he's obviously cheating. While they're having this discussion, Maria overhears them and asks what they are talking about. She tells them that magic had nothing to do with social status and that there was something about Kanata that there was a certain quality people like him possessed which made them pass the exam, and therefore she suggested that they should stop letting their foolish pride get in the way. The boys turn to her and say that they agree. Kanata calls out to Maria and thanks her, to which she says that the magic that he has shown was amazing and that she was astounded. He asks if her name is Lady Maria and thinks about how he thought that she was part of the royal family and also the youngest of the 3 princesses. He decides they should get over with this quickly as everybody was staring at them. She turns to Kanata and says that he must be wondering how conflicts kept arising around social statuses. Checking 10 years, saying that he should hear what the others had to say about it. He asks what she means, to which she then stops talking and says that it was absolutely nothing, that he shouldn't go around provoking people, even if he is angry. Kanata thinks about how that was where it had started. Kanata, as soon as he gets home, sits on his computer and starts his stream. He's asked by his audience if he had run into any troubles at work or at school. That reminds him that he used to actually be a work terminal, and that after he had enrolled there, he had to do a lot of tinkering to upgrade into something of a PC. Even in that world, there was a network that linked terminals together. However, the majority of people did not have access to technology or entertainment until now. Kanata had used his limitless power to create something similar to a streaming site. If others were to try streaming, they would run out of power in a matter of minutes. He tells his audience that nobles and commoners seemed to be getting into arguments again, and that these fights were about status and they never seemed to end. Kanata wonders how it would be nice if all of them could just get along, and that everybody was quite divided. One of his callers sends a donation, and Kanata begins to wonder what this is. The caller says that he is happy to be able to hear his voice again, and that as usual, he would be sending a letter with his gratitude, and that Kanata should accept her offer. It was from Anonymous Princess. She had sent 10 gold coins that had been transferred to him. He thanks her and notices something. He then inquires if she had also sent him money yesterday. He thinks about how this money would equate to a lot in his real life. He confirms that she is not stealing the money from her parents and asks if it's okay, to which she says that he needn't worry and that all of this money came from her own pocket. She tells him that she wouldn't mind offering herself as a candidate to be his lover and that he should let her. Kanata thinks about how it's not like he is meeting anybody in public and therefore is not at risk of being exposed. He further realizes that it's probably just a guy posing as a girl anyway and tells her thank you and that if they ever had a chance, he would love to meet. On the other hand, Maria thinks about how she can't help falling for him. She thinks about how this is another side of him that she absolutely adores. She begins to get restless, thinking about him. She acknowledges that he is rather strange and that he appeared out of nowhere like a hero. He had captivated people with his charisma and influence in the blink of an eye. He had even helped to save a lot of people, either through his kind words or through his guidance. He was always objective when it came to giving opinions, and his boldness was amazing. Any backlash that may have come from it was definitely not unprecedented. It felt as if his voice had entered her mind, and as if every inch of her body had been marked by him. She realizes that she doesn't want to just give him financial support, but that she wants to devote herself to him fully. That she wants to live for him. Adarashia had gained quite a large group of followers. From there on out, more people with similarly terrifying feelings would continue to appear. Kanata was still completely unaware of the catalyst that would cause him to meet these fans, resulting in a major incident. This world was where the reincarnated Kanata concealed his unlimited magic power. He continued with his activity as the only streamer of this other world, even while experiencing harsh treatments at his school. When he had come home, it would lead to an outcome where he would get 10 gold coins again from the princess. She had told him that she would sustain his living, and eventually, his stream had started overflowing with listeners. He had decided that he would stick to the way back home with fewer people, the route he normally took. That getting good grades, although he was just a commoner, wasn't a fluke. Ever since that incident, it had become very hard for him at school. For starters, he was going to clear up his mood with some streaming. While he was thinking this, he passed by Maria, who was being told by a boy that he loved her from the bottom of his heart. She tells him that she is sorry, but that there is already someone to whom her heart was destined for. After witnessing this, Kanata thinks about how the princess and that guy from before were still standing there, that even if he wanted, he could not pass through. The boy asks her if it is his fiancée as the third princess. She tells him that it's not allowed for her to find her own love. However, there was already someone that she wanted to give herself to. The boy storms off angrily and says that she should not worry about it. Kanata thinks about how Maria would certainly be his type, that she was an elegant beauty with big breasts. He invites her partner and says that he wonders what good deed her partner had done in order to be able to get her. He finally decides that he will take the long way back, but before he can leave, Maria catches him standing there. She tells him that listening in on others' conversations was not something that she had expected from him. She continues, saying that his shadow was visible. Kanata turns to her and apologizes, saying that this was his way back home. Maria tells him that she was just joking, to which he begins to feel relief. Upon hearing his voice, she wonders if that accent was something that she had heard before. As soon as Kanata arrives home, he starts his stream. He tells his listeners that he wanted to talk to them. The princess thinks about how she had been waiting for him. She tells him that she loves him and that her ears are so happy. She sends him some money, and he tells her that, as happy as he is for all the donations, his listeners should also think about themselves first. Otherwise, he would have to start feeling guilty as the one who had received them. The princess says that he should not be worried about that. Kanata begins to open that day's first letter, and the princess thinks about how she really needs to focus. The letter says that demons were a race that should be wiped out in common knowledge. At this point, he still really didn't understand that living together. He hadn't met any demons yet, but there were supposed to be good people among them. That even among humans, there should be a bunch of those who just get along without fighting. The caller tells him that, like with demons, there was discrimination which he had heard about often, and that there were enough bad guys under those that talked about demons as well. Back then, at some point, Kanata had also said something about it. As the girl is hearing this, she hopes that they will stop. Somebody approaches from behind her, and she is startled. She turns up and looks at the man, asking if he is her master. He says that she will do whatever he says, and therefore he should not whip her. She's asked what a young, well-dressed lady was doing there, and that she looked at them without knowing their pain. They were standing in a slave market, and she assumed that they would be reading about this in their studies. They hope to change the place, but the teacher tells him that they can't do anything about it. The girl says that even now there were apparently still nobles and ministers who partook in slavery behind closed doors, which made it very difficult to revise the law. According to what she had heard, it seemed that there was someone there who could give advice to those. Kanata says that he'd heard the name, but that if the caller really insisted on giving it a try, maybe he should try for another option to find a solution to this problem. He decides to open the next letter, which says that the person that wrote it wanted to get rid of the slave market. It was from the princess. She continued, saying that with her social status, it would be impossible to challenge the law, but that if she was really a princess, then she should try it, that it would be troublesome to deal with those old regulations. But it was also true that there were many lives that could be saved if she were to make a move. He tells her that he is looking forward to seeing what happens and which terribly treated slaves would get some hope out of this. They begin to wonder if she is actually a real princess. Maria decides that she is going to go and talk to her father. She brought the country into the movement. Slavery was eradicated, and through, reinforcements were sent to prevent it from reoccurring. There were no more suffering slaves after that. She had decided that therefore she would keep believing in who had showed her the way and that she would follow him. Discrimination was detriment to the peace. She decided that she wanted to act as a mediator between commoners and nobles here at the academy. She suddenly got a text, and upon reading that, she was confused, wondering what was going on. She had begun to just donate and donate. Upon seeing this, Kanata says that he is not a fan of nuisance listeners, that he is flattered, but he dislikes people who quarrel in a place where everybody is watching. Maria thinks about how he hates it, and therefore he probably hates her. He tells her that he will forgive her if they decide to get along. She says that she understands. He says that he does not get along with the demons, and that was also important. He begins to wonder what the Demon King looks like and how he just wants to see. He asks his scholars if anybody knows. All of them say that he should not talk about that topic. Kanata begins to wonder if he will be able to see a world in which humans and the demons live peacefully together. He's told that he was really interesting as a streamer and that the person who had called would start thinking more forward as well. Kanata still remained unaware that he had touched a taboo of this world. Sometime before the crisis, controversial statements, a girl had told a party that they were boring her and therefore killing them wasn't worth the effort, that they should return only when they were stronger. Suddenly, a portal had appeared out of nowhere, and they were told that the humans would call this more powerful than anything else, and that there was no reason why they could hope to fight against it. Chai begins to think about how she did not understand why they must fight for centuries on and wonders if this truly was the right choice for them. As Shruza was passing by, everybody was admiring her, thinking about how she was strong and beautiful as always. They called out to her and told her that the adventurers earlier had dropped something interesting. She begins to wonder what the point was and thinks that people should have more common sense. As she picks up what they had dropped, she realizes that it was a streamer. She begins to wonder who it could be. The others say that using that to listen to him was popular. She is told that there right now didn't have a signal. Shruza says that she understands, and that it might be useful for information gathering, that they should go make something that will get them a signal. They tell Shruza that they will go away. She thinks about how at least it would help kill time. Suddenly, she has a signal a few days later, and she hears a streamer asking what everybody had eaten that day, and that personally, he had eaten some egg toast himself. Shruza speaks to the computer saying that she had had meat and that it was a bit much for breakfast. She began to feel embarrassed, thinking about how she had replied, even though she knew that he could not hear her. She began to spend a lot of time listening to the streamers, thinking about how she was just killing time. Though once she had noticed that his calming streamers had become her daily routine. She begins to wonder what the device actually is, as magic power large enough to spread one's voice in all directions was pretty amazing that. In other words, a human with more mana than her was very interesting. While she's listening to him, he begins to ask why humans and demons had ever fought each other, that the only thing that would increase would be death counts, and it would bring on a meaningless war. Shruza thinks about how she completely agreed. He continued saying that if only they didn't focus on fights and had their leaders start peace talks with each other, then maybe some change could come, but that was just his opinion. He then changes the subject, asking what he should have for dinner, and Shruza begins to chuckle. From then on, Shruza had begun to see him as a comrade. She had seen the donations that were going through. She sent him one thinking about how it would be fine, as it was just from her personal wallet. She realized that was moments like those where she was the happiest. Similar to a certain other princess, she had completed her transformation into a yandere. Kanata had said that stuff like slavery and discrimination should be ended. Shruza had noticed that the nameless princess had donated yet again. She began to get very frustrated, thinking that was very annoying. Kanata was still speaking in the background, saying that getting along with demons was important, but that he wondered what the demon lord looked like. He asked his listeners if they wanted to find out. Upon hearing this, Shruza begins to question if he really wants to see her. He had then begun to mimic the demon lord and thought about how he would love to meet with her. Modi begins to wonder if she should write something. Kanata says that more importantly, he has an urgent matter that he needed to look into and that they should help him out. Shruza leaves and goes to take a shower. She begins to think about the streamer, the faceless child of humanity, and thinks about how she wants him, that she was the demon lord and an existent that ruled over many. However, if it was Grace, then she would be fine letting him rule over her. While she is thinking about this, her assistant enters and tells her that it's time for her departure. She asks if Shruza had gotten dizzy, to which Shruza tells her that the water was a bit hot. She told that it was actually the alphanet temperature as it normally was. Shruza decides that she wants to meet the streamer, and she begins to think about what she can do to grant such a wish and what she must do to see his face. She is overwhelmed with emotions. She feels a need to touch him with her hands and to hold him with her arms. She thinks about how she needs to go to the human realm as that is where he resides, and that she will offer him something that she has as a demon lord. And in return, he would grant her whatever she wanted. She opens up a portal. Kanata is at school and realizes that it is very noisy. That day they begin to look at the news and realize that the demons had sent a non-aggressive request for a ceasefire. All the students begin to talk about how this streamer was someone that had mentioned this. They wonder what the demon lord was listening to, and if he had heard Kanata. They wonder how big of a man he is, and if there is a rumor that he had been seen marked as an important figure in every country. In places Kanata was unaware of, he had gained more fame than he had ever imagined. The chapter continues with Kanata and his stream. He decides that he will tell everyone about it later, but for now, he was starved and wanted to go eat outside. While walking, he is thinking about how spending days off outside like that wasn't something that was so bad. He buys some bread, and as he eats it, he realizes that it tastes great. He wonders what's the idea spilling sauce on everybody's clothes like that. While he is walking, he sees a guy bump into a girl. The man then asks where she is going and says that she had spilled sauce on his shirt and asks what she was trying to do. She apologizes to him, but he says that she needs to make it up to him somehow. She tries to reason with him and tells him that he was the one that had bumped into her, but he does not listen. She realizes that the man is actually a scammer. He looks around and says that there aren't any soldiers around and wonders if that means that he will have to do something, and stepped in instead. He hesitates, knowing that stuff like this was very hard to be dealt with, but not doing anything would definitely be worse. He calls out to the man and tells him that all the lady had done was bump into him and he was acting unreasonably. The man asks what he means, saying that she had run fast enough to break his bones. He then asks Kanata what he wants to watch. Kanata begins to think about how the atmosphere was beginning to get quite embarrassing and that either way, he needed to make sure that the man let her go. He decides to use magic against him and grabs the man's arm. Upon seeing this, the man realizes that his arms were like sticks and begins to wonder how he had done that. Eventually, he gets scared and runs off. He tells Kanata that he had forgotten that he was supposed to go to work and that he didn't want to be late. Crystal turns around, thinking about how the man could have at least apologized first. But then he turns to the lady and asks what's wrong. She tells him that his voice sounded quite familiar. Kanata wonders if maybe she was someone that listened to his stream. He comes to the conclusion that if she found out then, maybe it could be the start of a new romance with a cute girl like her. But it seemed like it was just a misunderstanding and therefore he probably shouldn't do it. He tells her that she needs to go home before something like that happens again, to which she agrees. She thinks about how she could have chased him away, but she could have been injured and therefore she was thankful for the help. Kanata asks her if she is one of those, to which she asks what he means. She tells him that she appreciates his kindness and thanks him. She mentions that his voice sounded familiar. Kanata tells her that he's just a commoner, and she reassures him that there's no need to worry. Cheerfully, she says that she'll see him later and that they should meet again when any chance shows itself. Kanata agrees and begins to walk away, telling her that she should be mindful of her surroundings. While walking away, he remembers that she had a Kanata accessory and wonders if she was maybe a sister in training or something, but realizes that it doesn't matter either way. The girl, named Alfana, then returns back to her house, announcing that she had returned, to which another girl named Crow comes and greets her saying that there is something that she would like to say. Crow tells Alfana that she had gotten wrapped up in a scammer's fraud attempt and that was what she had heard, that it was a depressing piece. Alfana thinks about how maybe the number of people that knew about her identity as the Alphane was larger than what she had assumed. Crow tells her that this was quite painful, even though her presence was irreplaceable for the kingdom, and sometimes she was the key for negotiations with other countries. Alfana tells Crow that all humans were equal and that she should remember that they should despise the sin, not the person. Crow tells her that that is very merciful of her to think. Alfana thinks about how maybe the encounter with Kanata was not all bad, that he was quite a kind gentleman, and that she felt like their voices really were similar, to the point where she kept going back and forth between believing it and not. She sits down and realizes that nobody is around and begins to stream his podcast. He apologizes to his listeners, saying that it was time to spend the night reading their letters. Even the girl that was called the Alphane test was also a Yandere listener. She kept thinking about how he had a wonderful voice. There were a few reasons for her slight insanity, but in simplest terms, she liked his voice. Crow thought about how the scientist was always so calm, and she was amazing. Alfana told him that he had a lovely voice, and that every day she would purify her body just so she was ready to offer everything to him at a moment's notice. She was head over heels for his voice. It made her lower abdomen almost screw. She thought about how she would just get pregnant just from hearing his voice. She brought her attention back to the podcast, and he was showing off his hands. As she watched, she realized that there was a band-aid on his hand that was just like hers. She is shocked, wondering if it could be that man, but realizes that there was no way. Kanata asks his viewers if they can see his hands. He had gotten a magic item that he had finished building earlier that morning, and it was just for showing his hands to the camera. He checks on his sides and tells his listeners that it still looks pretty good, mentioning that the bruise hadn't healed, and therefore he had to keep the band-aid. He thinks about how it was impossible for people to find out who he was just by his hands, and maybe he should have worn gloves to keep his identity from being found out. On the other hand, Alfana begins to freak out, thinking about how those hands were his hands, the man that she had run into earlier. Kanata tells everybody that he had been clumsy earlier that morning, saying that everyone needed to be careful about things on top of bookshelves. Moving on, he tells everybody that today was the day he got a magic item, and he was planning on using them when he wanted to introduce something. He realizes that just seeing his hands had riled up the audience. He announces that he will now start reading letters. 2 hours later, he tells everybody that it was more fun today since everybody was so energetic. He breaks up another letter to read and thinks about how this isn't a normal letter, but actually a threat. A man had written to him saying that he was the thief that he had run into earlier, and that he had no clue what his dreams were, but it was annoying and it pissed him off. That people like him made his skin crawl. He tells Kanata that he will find him and will kill him painfully, that Kanata would spend the last days of his life shaking in bed. Kanata thinks that it's probably envy or possibly they just hated his existence. Either way, he realized that he did get money from just streaming and hiding his identity. And therefore it was not like he didn't understand hating that, but that people should not threaten others, that they could get thrown into jail for stuff like that. What would happen if someone had threatened to kill a stranger, even if it was a lie, and how much power did Kanata's listeners even have? Both of those were things that the thief did not have the answer to. A few hours later, the man was being captured. He was running away from somebody saying that he was Mantis and he was great. He realizes that there are a few soldiers standing behind him. He wonders if they had come all the way there just to meet him, or maybe they had come to make him run away from them with his tail between his legs, but that was all Kanata's fault. They began to fight, and the man opposing him says that to think that he would notice something as weak as that meant that Mantis wasn't a big deal. The soldier tells him that he should not cause him much trouble, and the girl with him agrees, saying that he should not make it more painful for himself. A demon is flying over when he says that. If he knew that humans would get there first, then he would be surprised. He would not have come there in the first place if he knew that they would make it first. Mantis turns around and asks who the people that are trying to kill him are. They tell him that they are believers of the streamer. They tell him that it was hard to believe that he dared to even think of killing the streamer, that by the gods, there really were hopeless fools like him in the world, that they would be passing an emergency judgment on him now. The demons, too, were believers. While less than their superiors, they still were plenty insane. They had served as a typical example of house carry. The online world was. A few days later, in Crisis School, kids were reading the newspaper saying that it had said that people had hunted down Mantis the thief and that he was killed. Kanata hears the name and wonders where he had heard it before. He realizes that even other pleasant students had been ignoring him for a couple of days. Maybe he had overdone it that one time and really didn't like this lonesome student life and wished he could change it. The students begin discussing how they had heard that the teachers had a really important meeting. The teacher enters and asks everybody to sit down. The students realize that the teacher looks very tired, and the teacher tells them that while it was a bit sudden, a certain person would be joining their class temporarily. However, she was someone of utmost importance to the capital. Even she had a fairly close relationship with royalty. Considering her own future, she decided to show herself there, and she had never shown her face publicly before. The teacher tells the students that they should try not to do anything rude and asks the girl to enter. Alphane enters the class, introducing herself and saying that while she may be young, she currently occupied the position of saintess. This chapter starts as the students in the class begin to wonder if it's really true that the saintess has just transferred into their class. Collectively, the class decides to go and see her. Kanata wonders if this is maybe how the rumors have started to spread. All of the students are gathered around the saintess's desk, commenting on how pretty she is and how they knew that this would happen. One of the students asks her why she had decided to transfer to this academy, to which she says that it was something like societal observation. She says that rather what she would like to say is that she actually had another goal in mind. Kanata thinks about what he knows about saintesses, thinking about how he had read about them before. Once every few decades, a person with mana and a personality befitting of a saintess was selected. While having the authorization to utilize the entire church, she also is born to diplomacy and shines in it. On top of that, she gets along with the royal family. In other words, she was one of the most important people, and she was probably friends with Maria. This leaves Kanata thinking that a girl that he had run into becoming a transfer student was quite weird and wonders if she would be a better fit for the class. He is relieved upon realizing that she had actually forgiven him for how he had treated her when they had met. He comes to the conclusion that she probably doesn't even remember him either way. Another boy passes through the whole crowd around Alphane's table and tells her that he is of the class, the Lundor's houses next in line, that his name was Zakatu, adding that he was at her service. She tells him that it's nice to meet him. He asks if she knows that Princess Maria was absent today due to official matters, to which Alphane asks if that is true. He tells her that he will be her guide and will show her around the school. Alfana tells him that she appreciates the offer but that she refuses. She also asks him to not call her by her name without permission. He apologizes to her, and Kanata thinks about how that was what he should have gotten for always acting so cocky and pathetic. He realizes that the next class was outside, and therefore he didn't have time to laugh. Outside, Alfana was practicing water splash, and her magic was quite strong as expected of a saintess. The other students were whispering about how she was on another level than Princess Maria and wonder why she's even in class. Kanata wonders if she is trying to people please and make connections for the sake of her family. Although nobles had it quite tough, not just being able to focus on themselves. This was weird. The teacher calls out for Kanata, asking him to go to the starting point. And Kanata does. He runs into Alfana, and she tells him to do his best. He's shocked, wondering if she had noticed him. He's happy since such a cute girl had told him to do his best. He had to show off. He begins to use water slash. He grazes the target, and the teacher tells him that that was a nice shot. The class thinks about how Kanata was as annoying as he always was, and that he was just a filthy peasant and wonders what he thinks he is. Kanata decides to ignore them. He thinks about how when he had heard that from Maria, he had thought it was a joke, but to think that nobles insulting peasants actually existed in this academy. The magic displayed was wonderful. Unlike his brute strength, it was refined and controlled. The teacher tells the class as such, incredible magic and untrained. I might interpret it as a horrifying operation. Ignoring one's weakness and insulting one's blessed with talent was unforgivable, no matter who they were. Telling the class that nobility did not make them special. Kanata thinks about how hearing this was great, but that this was a bit of an overreaction. The class sees Kanata approaching and begins to get angry, realizing that because of him, they had ended up getting lectured by both the princess and the saintess. Kanata realizes that the whole class was angry at him and chooses to ignore it, because either way, he had gotten many listeners, and therefore he was good. He is sitting alone, thinking about what he should talk about tonight on his stream. Alfana approaches him, and he is shocked. She tells him that she sees that he had a prior guest. Alfana tells Kanata that she was going to explore the school grounds a bit, and that was what had led her to him. She tells him that it's nice to meet again. He looks at her and asks if she was the girl that he had met in town. She says that she is, and that he doesn't have to be so cautious of her and should speak to her casually, like when they had first met. He agrees and tells her that he will talk normally. He realizes that being alone with her, there was nothing but bad news. Considering no one was there was actually a good thing. She asks him if it's alright with him if she could call him Kanata, and if she could be called by her name as well. He tells her that that is okay and says that she didn't like it when others were calling her by her name earlier. She says she wants him to call her by her name, telling him that they were lucky enough to meet again and asks if he can grant her a wish. He says that if she insists, then he will. He thinks about how it's a bit weird that she is acting like that, but really she is adorable, that she did have a nice personality and a good physique, but she was a bit too perfect and pretty. Alfana gets excited when called by her name, saying that that means that he basically agreed to marry her. Similar to how love is said to be blind, those obsessed with something inflate even about small things. For Kanata not to notice was normal because it was impossible to know that Alfana was harboring an unimaginable desire within her. The next day, Kanata was wondering where he should sit. Realizing that Alfana was early, he expected this of her. Maria enters, and the whole class is shocked. She asks Alfana if Alfana can come over, and they all begin to wonder why Maria is in this class when she is supposed to be in the other one. Someone walks over to Maria and tells her that it had been a while and that she was full of surprises. Alfana apologizes. Alfana tells her that she wanted to know what student life was like and that it was nothing. The class begins to gossip about how they're divine and therefore they're blessed to see the interaction. Kanata thinks about how they really were used to being the center of attention and thinks that this was probably just normal for them. They always came off as uninterested and disconnected from everything around them. He realizes that they would both react if he went and tried to talk to them. Although the smile that Alfana had shown him yesterday and Princess Maria's warning as well, maybe they were all in his imagination and maybe he was thinking too much. He realizes that the whole class is enjoying this a lot and realizes that this makes him feel very lonely and wonders if he can even make just one friend. He turns to one of the boys and asks if he would like to have dinner with him, to which he begins to get angry and tells him no. Kanata begins to feel very defeated. He decides that he will just take a nap. He decides that he will just ask his listeners to console him or something. At the same time, in the other empire, a certain noble's mansion, a mercenary had accepted an offer. Crow stands before a man and asks him who he has to kill. The man tells him not to go rushing things in and tells him to calm down as an ominous feeling fills the room. Kanata sits at his table with his head on the desk, thinking about Crow. As he does, the two girls sitting next to him begin talking about him. They talk about how it's hard to believe someone like that exists, as the other girl mentions that he showed up in Mithras the other day. Mithras is only 100 kilometers from where they are, which worries them as they wonder if they could become targets. However, they state that it is not like they had done anything to deserve it, so they probably won't come for them. Then they express how blessed they are that they were born into a clean family. Kanata, after having the conversation, realizes that in this world, crows don't refer to the bird but to assassins. He further thinks about how even information from his listeners isn't all that good for this one, and they all thought that it was just an urban legend of sorts. But to think that he exists, it's quite shocking. However, Kanata goes back to sleep since he believes that it has nothing to do with him and decides to rest again in his next lesson. Crow stands before the client who tells him that no one would think that a living legend like him would be in the Xandrid Empire. However, Crow, who has little patience for small conversation, tells him that he has given enough pretense and asks for the real target. He quips that unlike the client, he does not have free time, and his time is valuable, which kind of angers the client. But then Crow suddenly dashes past him, which shocks him as he can't begin to fathom how he was able to suddenly move from in front of the client to his back. As he tries to inquire further, he is told that he will not say it again and inquires about his target. He's told by the client that the target's name is Streamer and that he controls peasants with his words and even affects entire countries' laws. Thanks to him, the client's slavery business has been losing money because Streamer talks about human rights in his dreams, and it's even heard by royalty. He tries to further express his displeasure with Streamer. However, Crow tells him that it is enough and that he understands. The man expresses his dissatisfaction at not being able to express his dislike towards Streamer. However, he states that there is a deadline. The client further states that as long as he's a coward that hides his identity, it should take nobles a while to find him. He tells Crow that he's counting on him and that this is preliminary payment. However, as he tries to hand it over, Crow tells him that it is unnecessary, which leads to the client stating that Crow is rather confident and asks if he's planning on taking it all after the job. However, Crow walks away and tells him that his request is one that he can no longer take. While the client asks why it is so, Crow dashes back once again, this time with his sword drawn, and beheads the client in a moment. After his death, she stands up once again and states that since the client has died, Crow can no longer accept this job, and so he cannot accept this money, and that is all. Crow left the room as the servant walked in and stated that a sound came from here and wondered if something was wrong. However, she found her master dead. Crow stood on the roof and dashed from one rooftop to another. But as Crow eventually reached one far away, he took off his disguise and revealed that she was a girl who had first stated this outfit was all right for work, but it was such a pain. As she took off her outfit and threw it to the side, she stated that to request the murder of Lord Streamer was really trashy, and that such trash really does exist in the world. And as she sits atop the clock tower, a device suddenly starts to pick in beeping, which excites her as she excitedly proclaims that it is starting. From the device, a voice asks if everyone was waiting as Lord Streamer has now begun his dream. Even the legendary assassin was a listener to Lord Streamer's dreams, and as she began to make a racket, people from under the clock tower wondered where those noises were coming from. Lord Streamer began talking about his day. However, the assassin simply stated that ever since she met him, her nights had become so wonderful, and that he had such a wonderful voice, it was very refreshing. She was lost in her fantasy where she wanted Lord Streamer to scold her for being a useless assassin that does not work at night. However, in her fantasy, she lost track of time and ended up not being able to hear Lord Streamer at all. She then got herself to focus and began to hear the last part where Lord Streamer told his audience that he did his best and tried to make some friends. However, as soon as he began to talk to them, they all told him to shut up and asked his audience to control him a little bit. This, however, made the assassin, who realized that his voice was rather shaky, feel awful. She additionally added that if she was the one that he talked to, then she would have never even thought of hurting him, which is funny since she literally just killed a noble earlier. However, she further stated to him that there are no nobles and that they should be thanking him for even letting them hear his voice. Other audience members also consoled him, as one stated that they usually get told that by would-be hero parties as soon as they get here and so on. However, Lord Streamer was using a glass of water to make the crying noises. However, he stated that everything else was true, and he suddenly got a lot of interactions but felt somewhat bad and found them at the same time for worrying for him. Afterward, he read a letter that stated that he is a bit of a clean freak but saw something yesterday that really shook him. As Streamer read further, the letter stated that it was a filthy harlot, the likes of which masquerades as a plaything, and that they're basically trash. He really wished they didn't go around dirtying the city. Asking more with the letter, the girls attentively sat by waiting for his answer, as the man had asked for Streamer's opinion. The girls, however, were saddened by the people's reactions to them, as they were just trying to get out of hell. No matter how hard they try, people kept thinking that. However, Streamer's reaction was quite positive. He wondered what the hell the man was talking about and asked him who he thinks he is saying stuff like that. He further stated that the man had no right to judge someone based on their profession and that it is not a crime to sell one's body. He thinks that they are pretty brave and that it is a fine job. He further states that there are people who turn to the job of their own will, but he thinks more than half of them have to do that just to live. He further asked that they should just stop insulting people just because of their jobs, and any job can save someone. A lot of people are being saved, and that's why he wants them to be compensated and viewed fairly. His comment section agreed with him as well, calling him smart. He further stated that he wants a world where working people don't get mocked and can just be proud. They'd come this far. They'd lived until now. Kana had never received that kind of positive affirmation before, and her first string reached ears across the kingdom, resulting in tears of happiness from all those like her. It also resulted in the reflection of both civilians, and as a result, society's perception of prostitutes had changed. Now they can have easier lives within this world, and she does not know about other countries, but at least here, the people's treatment towards them is second to none, and it is all thanks to the streamer. As she grips that she would like to thank him some other way another day, she attentively listened to the streamer who stated that he tried to make some friends by talking to people today. However, the moment he opened his mouth, they told him to shut up, which was quite pathetic. Suddenly, her boss knocked on the door, however he opened it and found Kana. Angry that whoever it was who insulted the streamer and all those who worship him had the same anger, and the matter of who exactly saddened the streamer was their never-ending topic. 1 week later, Kanata was walking through the streets as he thought about how he was starving and wondered if they were still selling that bread. However, as he walked, he ran into a woman who stopped him asking if his name was Kanata. Certainly shocked since it was Princess Maria standing before him, he asked if it was alright for her to go out alone like this. However, she tried to tell him that it was fine. He then told her that he does not think that that counts as fine. He then told her that he will see her and is on his way. However, she stops him and asks if he's free, to which he tells her that he is. She then suggested they go on a walk together, and while he thinks about how he does want to go, if someone sees him with her, his school life would end. He wonders how he can get out of this situation. However, as they do stand there, they hear noises from the distance. Maria asks if he heard something coming from over there. As Maria drags Kanata to investigate, he tries to stop her. However, they end up finding a woman being groped by a man who tells her that he is a noble from Xandard and that she can't go acting like that around a noble. The two look on as the woman tells him that she just does not care and asks to be let go off. Kanata looks at Maria and states that they just can't catch a break, and now she agrees. The two get ready and tell the man to hold it right there and let go of her. Maria tells the man that she does not want to go with him. However, the man asks who they think they are and tells them not to get in his way. He drags a woman but then lets go as he approaches Maria and states that she is fairly pretty herself. As he approaches higher trying to grab her, she swats his hand away, which leads to him becoming angered, stating that he will kill her. However, as he's about to, Kanata grabs him from behind and tells him that he should calm down. Kanata then throws him onto the ground and casts magic on the noble, which does not allow him to move. Kanata tells him that it will stop after a few minutes, which is why he should calm down. The princess tells them that it is impressive as always and keeps it at that pace. The noble on the ground asks him if he knows what he just did, and that if he's a commoner, then he should know what would happen to him. However, Kanata states that he does not care, thinking about how it was self-defense. While he stands above the noble, the woman asks who he is, further inquiring if the person earlier was the princess. As Kanata looks back at her once again, he notices how beautiful she is, and he thinks that if she is this pretty, then this world's men can't be left alone. He asks her if she's okay, and if the noble did anything to her. However, she tells him that she is fine and that he just chased her down to try and purchase her. The noble tells Kaneda that she is a filthy prostitute and that he would not understand, and that the man tried to take her in because he liked her, but she had the gall to say no to him. Kana stated that the noble was pathetic enough to be fixated on such a thing, while Kaneda asked if he knew what he was talking about. Kaneda then went and laid in front of the noble and asked him if he knows what he's saying and why he's discriminating against Kana for her job, asking him if it is a crime to sell one's own body. His words were very similar to the first dream that he did that Kana heard. It made her think that he was perhaps Streamer. However, a large commotion began behind them, and people began to gather. The noble stated that he was a noble, and that Kaneda was a thief, and that if they helped him, he would give them a reward. However, those people would not be on his side since the princess was the one who gathered all the people. She told them that a brave shouldn't save a woman from a perverted noble. To be precise, a perverted noble was the one who was about to be arrested. The man also wondered whether royal knights were here, and Kana just thought the man was really an idiot. The noble was then told that the person standing in front of her was above plain nobility, and that it was Maria, the third princess, which shocked him. After the commotion died down somewhat, Maria thanked Kaneda for keeping him down. Since he did, she was able to make arrangements for an arrest. However, he just told her that it was his pleasure. She further went on to say that it was just an attempt this time, so forcing them home is the best that she can do. As the guards approached her and asked Princess Maria for advice regarding patrols from now on, as they headed out, Kaneda went on his way while thinking about how one thing was finally done and that it looked like patrols were going to be stricter now as well. But as he headed out, Kana approached him, calling out to him, and thanked him for helping her earlier. She also thanked him for affirming her and her job. However, he tried to take no gratitude, telling her the truth, nothing at all. She tried to look at his hands since Streamer once showed his audience his hands, and Kana asked for his name. Once he told her, she told him that she had spent a lot of time with men, so she's perfectly confident with how observant she is. Kana then introduced herself and handed him a token and stated that when they meet next time, that is what she wants him to call her. She also states that the token that she just handed him is something that if he shows it to the reception desk at the brothel she works at, they will let them see her immediately. She further goes on to say that if he's tired or wants to let out stress, she will help him free of charge. However, he becomes embarrassed as she giggles and walks away. She tells him that she asked to work and says goodbye to him. As she walked, Princess Maria approached from behind, stating that she is quite sharp. Kaneda tells her that the sun is going down and that he has to go back home too and says goodbye. However, Princess Maria got angry at him and asked why Kaneda did not invite her to go home together. However, he stated that if someone from the school sees him, then she should cover for him. However, Maria thought of how if it was Lord Streamer, then he would no doubt escort her, and maybe she's overthinking that they're similar. As the noble sat in jail, he was told that he would be sent home tomorrow and that he should cool his head here for now. As he did, he thought about why everything was happening. If it was just the princess, then it would be fine. But that the commoner brat is different. He humiliated the noble, and a commoner living in the capital named Kaneda is more than enough information for the noble to find him. In Streamer's next dream, he was asked about what he thinks about the power his words have. However, Streamer was oblivious and asked if he really has that sort of a thing and that he's really just telling them all what he's thinking. Hypothetically, if he did have that power, he would say that he wanted to take over the world, asking what they would do. All of the women, including the Demon King, the assassin, the prostitute, and the princess, all stated that they would help him in different ways, from giving him rule over the countries that they had conquered to using their hands to set the world to zero, to have him as the ruler, to killing anyone as long as he wished, using everything in their power and offering this world to him. He joked that they're all fired up, but that he was just joking and told them not to take it seriously. However, he thought of how streamers in his old world caused some huge flame wars just from their joke, and he should take care about what he says. He also told them to look forward to some of his reports about it from now on, beyond just talking, while he thought of how he wanted to do the same things as streamers in his world did. And he can only show his hand right now, but if he makes the camera a handheld, he can do some IRL streams. He got a donation of 10 gold coins from a nameless princess who told him that she loved him too. As she stated that he loves her too, which completely made her go crazy. Then he further added that he loved all of them, and he suddenly realized that it was pretty bad and that he should not do stuff like that, and that he feels like he heard a bird screaming somewhere. The next day, Kanata wondered why he was so sleepy in the mornings. All the girls sitting next to him wondered if the rumor was true that SS Class Agila being the streamer, and then he stated that he was going to reveal a secret of his. However, the girl stated that he was lying, and streamer said he was a commoner, and that Agila's a noble student drunk on power. Kanata, sitting right beside them, first thought about how there are listeners in his classes and further about how he was streamer, and then there are a lot of fakes that pop up when someone's famous and that he will tell everyone it's a lie in a string later. However, he suddenly thought of how if he said something only a student should know, something would be suspicious, and maybe he should just say someone told him about it. But he further thought about how noble students are people he does not want to deal with them looking down on him, and that he's a bit curious about this impersonator. Kanata walked around the school trying to look for the class, and as he did, he heard screams from inside with a student restraint convinced the others that he really was streamer, asking why they would not believe him. However, he realized that the situation had already resolved itself, and at that he did not need to worry since in his old world, it would be more like only using his name like that is cute in comparison. However, he needs to find out why he's pretending to be him, and after school, the student still did not stop trying to get others to believe him. As Kanata snooped on him, he saw the student angered at the fact that people would listen to a faceless commoner and not him, and this word revolves around nobles like him. However, Kanata got the idea by following him, and essentially the matter not extremely. His family is not all that popular. He wants his fame for himself, and if he's lucky, he'll get any idiot listener to listen to him and give him money. And that he needs to do that in order to become like him. And these are the motivations behind the student trying to pretend to be streamed would improve his family's reputation and take both the money and listeners, or at least that's what he wanted to do. However, of course, it won't go well to begin with since a person needs an unlimited amount of magic to even do something like that. But as streamer snooped, a woman behind him called Agila truly foolish, as they talked about how if someone's stupid, they can't be saved. This completely surprised him, as he did not expect anybody to be there, and as he looked back, he asked when the two arrived, and they told him that they had some plans with the student and apologized for surprising streamers. They then asked if Kanata also knew Lord Streamer, as they further professed that they're actually fans of him. However, the same thought about how it seems like she does not know about Kanata's identity, as she stated that others in the church only have a few moments of rest. Even so, just listening to Lord Streamer's voice calms her heart since Maria is the same. The children kept on saying that everyone would not shut up about that guy, wondering if they were cultists. That's why he decided to observe his actions a little longer. The princess thought that bringing her sword with her was the right decision. The princess stood firmly behind Kanata as he tried to hear what the student had to say, but he thought about how the thing that both of them were listeners made him really happy. He talked about how countries should be ruled too, and if they did not mind, then he is fine. Maria stated that she did not really mind his actions, but honestly, if someone tried to sabotage someone that she remotely cared about, she would not be able to forgive them. Kanata thought about how the princess is really nice for this since she can't forgive Agila. The students asked what Kanata thought, as he said that he thinks it's best he stopped lying, and he thinks that not even Streamer would want him to receive any harsh punishment, and as long as he reflects on his actions, it would all be good. Appreciating, Kanata looked back but found that the student was long gone and wondered where he had gone. It was as if the student just disappeared, and at that moment, the saint detected an evil presence. Agila was summoned to the Demon King's castle, and as she greeted him, she asked if it was true that he was a streamer, while he just thought about how he couldn't see anything, and that it felt like a mere presence was stopping him. The demon next to her stated that that man is a fake, and with such low mana, there's no way he could send a signal and across all possible directions. As the Demon King stated that she was aware and asked Agila if he did use the name of the one she loves, and she assumes that he's prepared to pay for this sin. As she stepped forward closer and closer to him, he fell to the ground and began to pee his pants. Kanata began looking around for Agila, while Maria stated that it's probably not good for Princess to not care, as they seemed stated that she feels as if it doesn't matter. But as the saintess she must, the two thought about how if she was a demon, then she would have kidnapped Agila to confirm the rumors, while Saintess was surprised that their numbers extended to the demons. Kanata heard what the two had been talking about. Suddenly a portal appeared on the wall. Kanata suddenly shielded the two. All he thought about how he did not know anything about fighting, but he had to protect the heroines at least. There was a foul smell that certainly appeared, and it was Agila who had wet his pants, as the Demon King's right-hand man stated that it was pretty embarrassing, asking if they thought as such too. The princess told Kaneda to stand back and then they would handle it, as he wondered if he was ahead. However, the demon apologized for appearing so suddenly and stated that their boss was pretty angry about Agila pretending to be the streamer, and she's done scolding him, so now they can have him back. It sounded the same as their motivations. Both the girls stood down as they stated that they have no animosity from him, while they demonstrated that they were doing the same thing as well. The demon told them that including him, there are a bunch of demon listeners as well, especially their boss, the demon lord, is pretty into him and listens to all his streams. Kaneda could not believe it. Maria, on the Saintess, were in all of him having conquered the demon lord's heart as well, and that are being connected both humans and demons is quite lovely. The demon stated that those two give off the same scent as his boss, and then as he looked over at him, he stated that he would be more willing to accept him as he was more than the poor sod over there in magic anyway. As Kaneda inquired why that was so, he hoped that his poker face was working, while they thought of how the demons thought his mana was abnormal as well. He was wondering who he was, as the Saintess stated to the demon lord representative that they should end the conversation here and her friends. Maria here is restraining herself as a government official, and they did have their plans for him, but they cannot perform a punishment heavier than this. The demon told her that she was nice and left in an unknown spheroid, and Princess Maria went to report this in as well. Kaneda started on with the Saintess. He spoke about how it was a weird day and that he was exhausted. As she agreed, she asked him, however, grabbing his hands, that she would want to thank him for helping them earlier and that it made her happy. Kaneda was even unable to look at her in the face as she told him that he was wonderful. They then looked at Agila and thought of how they could not just leave him alone. I told him that it was nice of him to think so, but Agila suddenly woke up and wondered where he was and began to run away, calling out to Lord Steamer. After that moment, Agila, as if he was someone else, accepted all his lies up front and made all his family's crimes public. A few days later, Kaneda walked the streets thinking of how if what that demon said was true, then the demon lord's listening, wondering if this was why they offered a ceasefire, but certainly he was called out by someone who asked if he had a moment. He asked what it was, as the woman asked if Kaneda could guide her around the town. Kaneda accepted. Kaneda accepted. There's a hidden truth behind the woman. As the woman walked through, she noted every little thing, the tailor, an adult shop, and so forth. However, the public was shocked at her beauty and at the size of her body's proportions. She found that truly interesting, and that this is the town that they called the capital. As Kaneda asked her if it was her first time here, she stated that it was her first time visiting this town. He wondered if she was the shelter type, as she apologized for making him spend his entire time guiding her. However, he told her that it was fine, and then he gets to walk alongside a pretty girl like her, after all, and she was flattered at him calling her pretty. He then suggested that they go look at some nice hidden spots, and they went atop a large overlook as the demon lord thought of how she has been trying to destroy such beautiful scenery. Lee noted that she was pretty strange and wondered what the weird atmosphere was that she was giving off and asked if she was human or not. She stated that she thought she could successfully hide herself as a human with her disguise. However, she sees now that, of course, he would be able to see through her. As he asked what she was talking about, she stated that there aren't any humans nearby, and she does not sense any magic, and this hidden spot that he has brought her to is quite convenient. As a reward for seeing through her, she will show him who she is. He thought of how the odor was exactly like the demon's odor, and she introduced herself as a humble demon, Shruza. He introduced himself as well and is a bit curious as to her. At first, she then told him that she has cut them off from the outside world, and the only one who can perceive and hear is her. Well, he thought about how magic is deep, and he should have studied it more before he went to school. Jenny asked Kaneda what he thought about demons, to which he stated that he got asked that before, and personally, he does not think they're any different really. Demons and humans have a history of fighting with each other, but it would definitely be better if they start getting along. And if someone dies in war, then demons would grieve too, as she stated that they do shed tears. She then inquired about his magic as she started that vacancy weep from someone's mother, and the amount that he has is greater than hers, and she did not think a human like him existed. As Kaneda gripped, asking if she could see how much has exceeded hers, she told him that she cannot see its limits after all, but she can now accept. As she grabbed his hand, she asked if he can accept and agree with her that humans and demons should walk hand in hand. As he did, he stated that the path would be tough, but he thinks they can definitely do it. Well, he thought of how her hands add little cold, but that she was no different than the humans. Kaneda then shared that there was a guy here called Streamer who had the same opinion, and that he talked about how peaceful it would be if they all got along. As he mentioned Streamer's name, Shruza fell to the ground and stated that her apologies were that she is a fan of him, and indeed he said those same things. Rather, it was thanks to his very words that she changed. Name a show, live streamers famous over there as well, as she stated that he is Sally popular, though the more hard-headed elders don't like him, but the Demon Lord is already taking care of them. While Kanata thought about how the Demon Lord probably told him something she was not supposed to, Kanata wondered what kind of place a demon world is. She suggested he go with her, and that if she is with him, he will be able to get in. However, he stated they could if they both have time. After promising to meet again, she went back home, and Kanata's strange day off began to end. No one in the human realm knows of the Demon Lord's true name, and Kanata had not noticed who Shruza truly was. In his dream at night, he stated that it was a bit earlier than usual, but that they were ending it here, adding additional sleep early as well. Sometimes, and as he lay in bed, he was beat from being a tour guide and said goodnight to no one in particular. And as I said earlier, Kanata's strange day off began to an end. However, it was supposed to, but a crow came into his room. A few days ago, Krauman approached another client and asked them who they wanted dead. The client Krauman, however, was the perverted noble who chased down Kanata. Thanks to Maria and Kanata, he got sent back to his home country, and the noble handed off files on Kanata to Crow, telling Crow to bring the noble Kanata's head. As she read the file, she stated that it was not a noble or an adventurer but a disciplined commoner in the capital, and that it seemed like an easy job. Crow wondered, and she got embarrassed in the middle of a crowd, which is why he felt so strongly about it. Crow considered taking the offer, noting that it seemed like the target just had poor luck, and after sealing the contract, she began to gather intel. 1 hour later, it was quite easy. All the information that she gathered, as she was told that he was someone who bought a lot of bread from one person's job, and that he helped out another person's sister from a scammer, and that he finally saved a woman from a pervert. She noted that it was rather easy to gather information on him, that he seems like a good person, so it's a bit painful. But since she has accepted the job, she can't go back now, and so she can continue on as the Crow. She has no other choice than that. An existence that from across the screen gives even doubtful assassins like her a reason to live, was what Streamer was for her. Streamer, who himself hides his true self, the girl hides her true self as Crow, and she thought of that as one of their many similarities and formed a parasocial bond with him. Crow, too, is a girl around that age. She only knew him from the townsfolk, which was a pure coincidence. And as she tuned in to Streamer's stream, she thought that the world got some pretty interesting jobs, and if they knew any rare ones, they should tell him. Crow herself did not expect to like him this much, and countless times she's ignored calls for jobs just to listen to him and should completely fall into his influence. While Kanata read about her job, as he read, he heard that there are those in this world who lived through assassination. He stated that it was dark and that he does know of them, which is a shock. He shared that they're kind of scary, but honestly, he thinks that they're rather cool. As Crow knew that what she was doing was bad, and she was a convenient handyman for crime, that's what assassins are. However, Kanata stated that they hide in the darkness and stealthily kill their targets, and that he loved those kinds of games back then. That's what he thought. More on, he stated that nevertheless, it's a crime, so it may be a bit hard to think of them in a positive light. But from his point of view, he just thinks that it's interesting that people are in what line of work and then moved on from that question. As Crow thought that she did not only like Lord Streamer, she loved him. Crow is also way too gullible. As she eventually reached Kanata's house, she thought of how this was the target's house and that he left the window open, noting that he was rather careless. However, as she was about to enter, she saw him getting ready to stream. As she thought, if he was a streamer, he decided to close his window, and in doing so, Crow had to get on the ceiling. The intervention of listeners is far beyond normal people, or perhaps it was her eyes as an assassin. But in that moment, Crow realized that Kanata and Streamer are one and the same. She wondered if she was dreaming as she heard him stream, and she was beyond belief at the ability to get to see him in person and listen to his dream. While the noble thought of how he heard Crow's fairly brutal, and that he was definitely making that peasant cry in pain right now, however, Crow enjoyed the world's first public recording session. And afterward, they reached the present where Crow jumped down from the ceiling, and without rest nor sleep, she stayed in Kanata's room. However, even the legendary Crow got tired, and as drips of her fell down on him, he wondered if it was rainwater leaking. He looked up and found Crow on the ceiling. He was shocked at first and asked her who she was and why she was here. More so than being found, more so than feeling her mission, she was much more happy that Kanata saw her. In response to his question, Crow, with absolute unwavering confidence, answered that it was a pleasure to meet him, Lord Streamer, and that she is a normal, unsuspicious person. As Kanata asked if she thought he would believe that, and from this day on, Kanata's stream activities would be thrown into chaos, but he himself had no reason to know this yet. A girl came up to him and introduced herself as Mira, telling him that she was a big fan of his. The boy was now nervous and thought about the fact that she knew his identity and everything. He wondered what to do next. Mira told him that she was also known as Crow. He asked if she meant crow as the word, and she told him that it was correct. It was kind of unbelievable for him, and he went on asking if that was the legendary assassin thing. He proceeded to ask why the legendary assassin snuck into his room and watched him sleep. Mira was quiet for a moment and then told him that she was a fan of his. The boy thought that this was not going to work out. This did not happen in his last life. He thought about what to do, and that was when Mira asked him if he was troubled, and if she was the cause of his troubles. He told her that she was, and she understood. Mira bid farewell to her lord and told him that she was going to die by splitting her throat. Suddenly, he screamed at her to stop as soon as she was going to kill herself. He asked her to put her spot down and shouted at her, telling her what she was thinking and what in the world was wrong with her. She told him that she was going to do that because she was causing him trouble, and if he thought of her as a nuisance, she clearly had no value as a living being. She told all this to her lord, and he was very surprised. He understood all this and realized that he could not do this anymore, as Mira was that type of girl to actually die if he told her to. She had gone way past Yonders or even Maharis. He realized that she was so far gone that he might actually cry. He asked if she was okay and then proceeded to tell her that that was not what he wanted to happen. He could not think straight at this point, and he concluded by telling her not to die for now. If she cut off her own head, there would be a bloodbath that would be a pain to clean. She asked if she should do that somewhere else, not to bother him, and he was angry, telling her that was not the problem here. He could not understand what the problem was. Now he knelt down on one knee to her level and called her Crow, rather Mira. Mira told him that he was the only one who knew Crow's true name. He realized this and told her if he knew who she was, did that mean that he would get killed? Mira tried to figure out who he was talking about and called out to get rid of them immediately. The boy realized that this was also not working, and he did not believe that she was Crow at all. He asked her to prove it. Somehow, Mira thought of a way and then told her lord that she was fairly good at presence concealment, so she did it for him, and suddenly she disappeared from the room. Her lord could not find her anywhere in the room. He did not feel any magic, so he concluded that this was not a spell. He reached out his hands to try to feel Mira, but he could not, as she was invisible. Now he was currently right in front of her. As Mira told him that, he put his hand on something. Suddenly, she appeared again, and now his hands were on Mira's chest. He apologized as soon as he saw where his hands were. She said that it was oak and told him that she was happy being touched by him. Her lord felt all kinds of emotions at once, like embarrassment, awkwardness, and exhaustion, but just agreed with her. He asked her if she was in his room again with suspicion, and she replied that it was true but he cut her off and told her she could get herself killed just for that. This world was horrifying for him. Comforted him by saying that, as a result, she was really happy. He asked Mira if she planned on killing him more. She was furious and replied that she was not planning to do that and told him not to worry, as she would actually like to protect him rather than harm him. And currently, there was one who put in the request as a stalker. They kept inside the room where he was studying and wondered if these lessons will end soon, as her mission was to kill him. She called him names like a piece of shit. Crow was called a traitor and a fool. She apologized to make them all wait and looked over the boy that summed dead up for Mira and asked not to needlessly kill people. He realized that she was a reliable person, like a bodyguard, but leaving her next to him was a bit too square. As he listened to the story, he wondered and then saw his terminal lighting up. He wondered if those letters he asked for finally arrived. He picked up the terminal and decided to look at it. He would use this chance to calm down as well. As soon as he saw the screen, he was in shock. It was written that he was a mass murderer, and they did not think he would go to such means just to be famous. He was called a streamer, and they could not forgive his sense. Mira tried to sneak up on him to see the phone, but she could not read anything. The message said to cast his voice over such a large distance needed equally large amounts of mana. No matter how much he saved, he would be dead. If he was alone. In other words, he would need to kill the man of a large number of humans and ask the streamer how many lives he'd have taken and how much suffering he had caused just to reach where he was right now. They would never forgive him, they would smite him down. Streamer was very nervous and scared. He did not know what the hell they were saying. He wondered if that rumor spread in just a few days. He was using his own mana for his dreams, while Mira was on the side of her lord's bed, sniffing his bed sheets and getting used to the smell of her lord. The streamer was very confused on what to do. As he thought that this was a really big pain, Mira went up to her lord and asked him what had happened in his past life. Rumors like these caused assumptions and ended up giving celebrities weird labels. He did not think that would happen to him. He paused for a second and asked Mira what he did to his bed earlier. Mira tried to act clueless and asked what he was talking about. Lord Streamer was loved by everyone. Streamer, while being a big name in this world, was called Ataraxia. Some of the many who were charmed by his values and beliefs turned into Yandir listeners. The unique culture of streaming that he brought was steadily spreading among the general populace, releasing slaves, ceasefire with demons, the resurrection of bandit guilds, the betterment of discrimination based on profession, and the power to move countries with a single word. All of this was envied by many. Among them were some who were similar, trying to perform streams in small countries, rather close to Rogus. At the Santi noble household, a girl got hurt and fell down. She thought that this was nowhere near enough mana. The man shouted at them, telling them that they were worthless, every single one of them, while they begged for forgiveness. As they could not go on, they were at his feet. He asked everyone why they thought he brought them. There, he again called them ungrateful. A servant approached him, calling him Master Rikba. He asked what the matter was, and the servant told him that he believed that he knew the matter already, but mana was just as valuable as blood to them. If he drained them of their mana to their limits, they would die, and if they do, new slaves must be brought, and expenses would needlessly increase since they had nothing left to give. He believed that letting them rest for a small while was best. He asked if there were none left, and he told him that this was the last batch. The master was frustrated, but he guessed that slaves at the bottom of the barrel could only give this much. The kingdom princess put new laws on slavery, making it even harder to get new stock in this country. The princess was very proud of this. People were asked to restrain themselves, and the fact that the princess wanted them to treat those things nicely was stupid to the master. He told them that they managed to capture an SS rank adventurer yesterday and asked how that went. He had enough for 5 minutes put into streaming time. He looked at the device and wondered how, in 5 minutes, did they match a streamer. He wondered how much mana that guy had. He was shocked and thought that having a whole night stream was impossible for a single guy. He called him a lowlife and wondered how many lives he had taken just to do all this. This is how the rumors about Streamer began. He ordered the people to anonymously report all of this and asked if they had understood this. He was happy, thinking that they got the truth of all this and they are now on that boy's sins and will drag him down to hell. He asked them to hand him the man for that 5-minute stream. He would do it at the end of his stream tomorrow. In the present day, Streamer is looking at his phone in complete shock. He thinks that it is idiotic. Mira asked if it was okay to leave them be. It was not true, really, but he wanted to see how it turned out. Mira did not want to be misunderstood by this world for her lord. While her master thought that it was normal, she wondered when she was going home. Mira had glasses on, and the boy wondered where those came from. She asked if it was a pain, then how about she takes care of them for him. She asked about the option to sell some of their organs, and the boy completely denied this offer. He wondered that he thought that her fans were gentle people, but they were not. The boy leaving the room told Mira that he was going for a walk, as he wanted to cool down for a bit. Mira, being protective of him, asked to come along, so they started to walk out of the room. As he agreed if she did not make sure that no one sees her, she agreed and told him that she could do that much. She asked if he thought of her as a stalker, but she was not. Now they went outside under the big moon. The Lord was happy as it felt nice for him outside. Suddenly, the device rang with a buzzing sensation. There was a message calling them fools for mindlessly enjoying Streamer's antics. He told them that he was sure that some of them already knew this, but they don't know all of the Streamer's evil doings within these 5 minutes. He would teach them all the truth. People were reading this and engaging with it. They wondered how many he had killed. Now they thought about the whole situation and wondered if he may be right. Many girls and boys on their laptops and devices looked at this information, wondering if it was true and going into thought. Mira was angry and thought that there was no way that he was doing this. She tried to destroy the device and was in denial that he would do anything like that. Her master called out her name, Amira. She was silent for a moment and then proceeded to reply. Now she had a mark on her face and wondered that it was close. If her Lord Streamer was not next to her, then she might have ended up destroying everything within 5 meters. It was like treading through a minefield. The streamer asked Mira if he had a favor to ask and if she could hear him out. Ripa the Fool had stepped right on a sleeping tiger's tail. It was time to start today's first lesson as the streamer was in school. He thought about what to do next as he sat on a bench in his school. He looked at his friends, waving each other goodbye. Now he looked at other girls sitting on a bench who were talking about his stream from yesterday. They wondered if it was true as they discussed it with each other, thinking about the fact that he killed people. Her friend replied that it was not possible to have that much mana on your own, so it was possible. He wondered that his stream from yesterday was making some pretty big waves. Then another voice sat on his chair at the desktop, wondering that there were lots of people who asked about how his stream worked before. Many people thought they could do it too and wanted to learn how to do it, but the boys at the bench thought that he could do it only because it was him, and that would be his only excuse for doing that. The infinite magical energy he gained when he reincarnated was apparently a one-of-a-kind ability in this world. He could cast high-class magic repeatedly without worrying about mana, and he was immune to any enemies in dungeons that took out his magical energy. If he let his guard down, he would end up accidentally surpassing everyone else, but he was the first of his kind, so no one would believe him. Now he walked around his school, thinking that maybe it was best if he kept this power to himself. Otherwise, it would be a pain. As long as he could do his dreams, he was right. Now he sat somewhere else in his school and later came back home, sat on his bed exhausted. He was still wondering about the situation he had going on in his life and thought that his antics were still in the middle of forming conspiracy theories. He hoped that this had not blown up. Suddenly, Mira came up to his room and shocked her lord. He was surprised where she had come from, but she had the ability to do that. Mira apologized for making him wait, calling him Lord Kanata. She asked if everything was right by looking at the expression on his face. He told her that everything was okay, but asked her not to do that. Mira offered him something that was a piece of paper and proceeded to tell him that she had tried her best to receive and gather information that was present on that paper. She had to admit that she had to use a bit of force, but if it was an order from him, she would be willing to do anything. So she gave him that paper. He thanked Mira. He looked at the paper and called out her name. Mira was getting emotional and teary-eyed with happiness as an assassin like her was getting thanked, and by none other than the Lord Streamer himself. She thought that she was losing consciousness. The streamer looked over at Mira right now and thought that she was getting tired. That's why she fell asleep. Now he looked at the piece of paper and saw a small country, pretty far from there, as a noble from this scent place was behind all of this, and as a result, a group of envious streamers formed and appeared to have become a full-blown organization. That was worse than blowing up for the streamer, but still he gathered this information and got it by Mira, so he should have expected as much from Crow. No, Mira woke up and told her master that if he wished, she could go out to gather more information. Her master asked if she was fine with that, and she got up in a second to fulfill her master's command and asked him to leave it to her to gather the information. Now he has a piece of paper in his hand and thought that she would hurry up to get the truth so fast. Now they were outside, and he asked Mira for the favor. She proceeded to ask what the favor was, and he told her that he wanted her to look into that stream. She used for the network information and asked her if that was right. As he was trying to convince her, she told him to leave it to her. He read the paper that had the details on the rumors. Streamer gained trust with former slaves and supported them, but in truth, he did take them all in their magical energy. He thought that it was a creative one. There was a possibility that those supporting him were currently brainwashed. Ending his existence as soon as possible would be the only way to stop his horrid crimes. Now there was a knock on his door. Mira came inside, telling that not just his streamers, but his listeners too. Now they just did not stop with those selfish assumptions. Even in the situation, listeners who believed these rumors seemed to be a small number. From now on, people whispered and talked about the situation. They thought it was scary, and it all made sense to this. Now this was slander, and people try to control one another, and in the situation, listeners who believed these rumors did not even know who he was. It was not like he had any wounds on him. If he left this alone, he would come back to bite him. He knew that much, but his words were not enough. He needed an easy way to solve this misunderstanding. Suddenly, he could show off his hands during streams. If he used this, and mimicking the school entrance exam might change everything for him. The ball they had to touch during their entrance exam was an item to classify the amount of mana you have. It was the mana measurement, or RB if he remembered. He needed one of them if he seriously tried to use it and let his listeners see. Then it would be proved that he was streaming with his own power. But it looked expensive and not something they would lend to a regular student. No, Mira was listening to all of this, and just like her, he was thinking of lying. He had to wish to pledge this world of sinners, and she understood her lord's emotions. Girls came up to Lord Kaneda, and he was aware of this. He recognized one of the girls, and there was silence. She was confused and thought that it was clothes. If he lost himself in this right now, if he was not careful, the girl asked if something was wrong. He did not have to finish the sentence for her to understand. He was the person who would help anyone in need, a person they could trust. So now was the time that they needed help. They just so happened to be born, blessed with power and influence. They must use those things to help those in need. So they pleaded to rely on them. He thought if they were the only two, he could trust them. He had a favor to ask them to, and asked if it was okay. But before that, he apologized as he was a streamer. Two girls told the streamer that even if they knew the truth, they were still his fans, and they called him Lord Streamer. They would never do anything to cause him any trouble. Otherwise, they would not have any right to call themselves his fans. The other girls supported her friend's sentiments, expressing that they only wanted him to keep letting them hear his voice and that they were still looking forward to listening to his words with the usual fearless attitude. The Princess Maria got upset as she wanted to be treated like the other girl and insisted he did not need to call her princess for now. He understood what they told him. The girls told him that they were his allies and were princesses and priestesses. He could say anything he wanted, and they would grant it for him. He proceeded to think that even if they already knew his identity, those two did not leak any of it and kept his secret safe. If they were trusted by him, he knew it in his heart. However, there was something weirdly different about them from usual, and he wondered if he was imagining this. Even then, they were so close to him and staring at him. He wondered if someone heard them and why there were not any people around. One of the girls told him that she asked them to ward off others before they started talking. From how he looked, she guessed that he did not want anyone else hearing them. He thought that it was awesome and thanked them. The girls told him that it was their pleasure. Now he proceeded to tell them what he wanted to talk to the two of them about, the rumors surrounding the streamer. The girls agreed that they knew of the rumors, considering them conspiracies. They gave him immediate answers, and it seemed to them that they really were conspiracies. One of the girls told him that she had been requesting her mother and father to do something about the rumors because of a mysterious cooperation. They had already figured out its route, so the investigations were done. The master streamer wondered about the cooperation and thought that there was no way they called him a mass murderer, but they had not found any cases of that in their country. The girls proceeded to tell him that what he did not streamer took more mana than any normal person could have, and that was very much true. So starting from their parents, each country's leader began thinking that he had more mana than everyone and everything in this world, or that he had been using a device to create mana that was unknown to them in order to stream. She had hit the nail on the head. He thought she did not plan on asking if they were his fans. It had to be done as a fan. In other words, even if he did not rely on them, supporters were already moving to end this quickly. His name had a very big meaning in this world. Now, as he was the Lord Streamer, he even had never-ending support from the Khan folk. So many people, many of his believers, absolutely would not forgive any action that would trouble him. So that's how it was. But she did not want anyone else to clean up his mess. He thought that he wanted to prove his innocence with his own hands, so that is why he wanted to ask for the girls' help and pleaded with them. Since they knew everything and he trusted the girls, he tried to tell them the plan, and they asked him to proceed with it. He asked if they remembered the OIB from the first time they entered the school. It seemed to be a valuable item as they forbade anyone from taking it, and they locked it deep in the school. The girls wondered about that item. He proceeded to tell the girls that he needed to get that item in order to resolve this problem. As a princess, she told him that she would grant him that permission as the restlessness. They both granted him the permission, of course. No matter how the situation turned out, the two girls decided to take on their responsibility to protect and serve their Lord Streamer, whom they admired very much. They got very close to their Lord Streamer in admiration, telling him that they would do anything to protect and serve him, the Lord Streamer. Now feeling uncomfortable, he could not bear to watch them get so close and disclose to him, and he told them to back off. As they were getting really close, Streamer and disbelievers had joined hands to stop these rumors. They were committed to fighting these rumors to protect the Lord. He was really happy that they put a step back, but how this event will change the Streamer's position would be revealed very soon. School was already done for today, so the boy thought that he could get a bunch of stuff ready for tomorrow. He thanked the two girls for agreeing to help. He would like to take a break from streaming and prepare as much as he could tonight. The girls thought that there would be no streaming today. The boy proceeded to tell the girls that the plan begins tomorrow at 6 in the evening at the meeting place. The girls understood it with admiration and agreed to accept anything that their Lord Dreamer told them to do, as they loved him very much. There was a knock on the door, and the girl opened it. It was Alfano. She asked what was wrong, and if it was about her Lord who streamed. The girl told her that it was about the Lord and started to shake the little girl with aggression. She shouted at her while asking if he was really the Lord Streamer. The girl did not know what to answer, as she was scared and very confused why she was being shaken up like that. She asked the other girl if she did not know this fact until right now. Her hand was spinning from all the swinging around, and she pushed the girl away, asking her to stop swinging her around and calm down first. She then proceeded to talk to her, as they could not hold a conversation while they were fighting aggressively or being pushed. There was no way the other girl could calm down. She just started shouting at the girl. She tried to jump out the window, explaining that she considered her idol and it was her own classmate. She broke the windows of the little girl's room. She begged her to stop destroying her room. There was glass everywhere, but it was fixed with magic. Suddenly, the girl realized that she had always noticed that she was not lying. She asked not to get her wrong, as she was never sure, but his way of speaking was always familiar to her, and it reminded her of something. The girl asked her to please stop murmuring her own mouth. She could simply use her meetings from now on to make Lord fall for her, this streamer or the Lord, which name she should call him by. That was a quick shift. She was thinking of what to call them, then she was basically married in her head. That girl thought that she had made an absurd conclusion. She thought she should start planning their weddings and thought that she would be so busy. Now she interrupted the other girl by saying she would be the Lord's bride, not her. The other girl thought that she was joking, so she laughed along and thought that she was on cloud 9. She better warn her now before she goes crazy and uses her right as a princess on him. She asked Maria if she should say something, but Maria sealed the little girl's mouth and told her that when he is at school, he is the Lord, not the Lord Streamer, and Maria should not forget that if she does anything to cause him troubles, she would not forgive her, even if they are friends. She saw her face and thought that she had not seen it since she replaced her alarm clock with a bomb when they were 5. It was the same one. There was a flashback of them being in their childhood, as the little girl apologized to her when she was asked if she wished to see the underworld, but the girl was scared. That is why she apologized. Back to the present day, she asked her to think clearly, as even if after all of this is over, they will still be the ones to know his identity. In other words, they were ahead of other fans. They could provide their support to him from now on. Maria was in shock after hearing all of this, and indeed it was currently the number of listeners who know Streamer's real identity were very small. For now at least there was no stream today, and people were shocked about this. Maria told her that she was right, so they should form the shadows. They would support him in any way they could so the world does not find out about his real identity. And these girls would be the only group of people in the small circle that would know about the streamer's real identity. They planned their strategy to do this ahead and concluded that this is how they should be as fans who know the truth. As Lord Streamer's fans, they were very excited to be part of this plan and put the differences aside to be united with one cause, to protect the Lord Streamer. How they should be. These two were described as listeners before, but it seems that it was mistaken, as they were now very much more than fans. They were allies now, and they showed hands over this and made up back to support Lord together, and the other girl agreed with Maria. After all, they were friends, and they put their past behind them as princesses, and as these two who would help one another would come together for the sake of just one man. Such a wonderful friendship between two young girls was appreciated, and light went out of their bodies as they were being kind in the situation. But it will be Lord number 1, and the other would be the Lord's favorite, Maria and Alana, because she was the first in the world to ever know who Lord Streamer was, and the other one was the first to recognize his talents. After all, they both thought they were special in their own way to serve their Lord. One of them said that she retracted what she just said, and they were just playing around for now. Alfano told Maria that she was as much of her as she was, though they were the same, as she assumed tonight was the night before the revolution, and Lord was busy. so they won't be a stream, so they use their devices to use the words to raise morale for tomorrow. Luckily, there were not any classes tomorrow, said Maria, and just bracing themselves was not good. It was a good idea for them. Maria told her that which team she should achieve, told her the name of the stream, and said that of course it would be this one. The phone buzzed, and it was said how about they all become his. They were very happy and excited to be serving the Lord and shouted that they loved their streamer. They just lost the need to hide anything, as if they stopped holding back. They screamed their love through the night. Because around the same time, from the Lord's point of view, as he was explaining to the two girls, the plan that began tomorrow at 6 in the evening, and they met at the palace, even if it was just to solve this misunderstanding, he could not wait to do the special stream tomorrow. And to do that, he has to prepare. Since it was late, he was probably a normal student like him, good not to convince him to let him. There were guards outside the school who thought that they would not let any students go out at this hour. He thought of a way to go out, and if there was someone who could get past them, it was Mira. As she appeared back with the Lord, wondered where she came from. She asked what he needed from the capital solid at night, and called him my lord. He told her that there was this adult whose help he needed. Was all they wanted to get down to business. He had been waiting for this hour, but he did not mean that in that way. He would pay any amount. He just needed an outfit made really fast. He asked her to introduce him to someone. She agreed and told him that she would write a map for him right away and asked him not to worry about anything. She was there to serve him with anything that he needed. She told him that they were tight-lipped and her like, so they went around the capital until the sun went after her lord wherever he took her, until they were only an hour left before the meeting time. They reached the palace of Maria. She wanted to wait, and it was this. He wondered if they could really go for a trip and borrow this place for a stream. As he walked around the big palace with Mira by her side, he wondered about the fact that it was just what he could expect from them as they were allies, and he was very glad about this fact. It was now time to get ready and make preparations for the next mission. He decided to commission them the next time too. He now put on the outfit that was made especially for him and thought that it was really well made. They were fine in the equipment, and he made the camera detachable as well, and it didn't need any further tinkering. Now the real problem was something else. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. It was the two girls who were now allies that the Lord trusted. The real problem was getting these two mentally ready. Maria asked if this was a really good idea. Even if it was the three of them, this was nerve-wracking for them. The Lord told them that it was fine if they did not show up as well, but the girls convinced him that they only wanted to help him in any way possible. The chances of people finding out about him as a commoner would get smaller if the two girls were with him. At the meeting on the previous day, he wondered if should reveal himself, as with their current proposal, people may find out that he was a student living in a dormitory on school grounds, and the girls could not let that happen to him to have the streamer revealed like that. It was true that Alfano found out about him through his hands. Lord wondered about what to do next, and the girls comforted him that he should not worry as he could use her secret villa for his streams, as her parents did not know about it as well. But even if it was as secret, a villa was hard to hide, so even if people were staring, they would not notice that toward people who came from being a sentence. It caused people to not care for the affected area. That was essentially how the magic word worked. The boy realized this and thought that she could just cause that on the whole villa and make sure to modify the barrier tomorrow so they could see it. Another effect is that she did not know how affected it would be, but if she mixed her magic with her while they stream, then they could stream freely without worrying about anyone tracking their location. And they agreed on this. If they could master that by tomorrow, they could safely feel the team themselves. He was asked to forgive his words, but that magic was passed down from sentence to sentence. Even if it was for their lord, they could not betray the judge. She had to be by his side. If they don't want to get found out, they have to open the villa up, so they need her too, and ask the Lord to bring them with him, and that was okay with the Lord. He should think to thank them again later. He asked if there was. Mira pretended to leave. She had to stream until he was satisfied. If anything happened, it would be here. She loves to live up to her name. She even got past Alfano's magic somehow. Realized it was finally time, but there was no way they could work right now. They wished her good luck, and they thought he was attracted to the demons. He was different from the other humans, and they decided to watch his last dream. There was a ringing on the door, and it was time for the Lord's tumor. They decided to go as planned, and they understood he was nervous, but this was just an evolution of live streaming. It was the world's first attempt at it. He had to enjoy it streaming, no matter what excuses, but this would be his final stream, so he could go on and expose his hands along his awful voice. If any of you saw an opening, they should go for it, ordered their master villain. There was a buzz on the device. The listeners were attentive. They waited for him, just like that. The curtains to what would be called the legend of Streamer had been raised for a short time. People looked at the way he spoke, the way he moved. There was no way now. He asked everyone how he looked, as they all had to forgive him for not chewing his face. He wanted to prove that he was innocent against these allegations, so he decided on a slightly different stream. This time recently a certain country had been alleging that he committed mass murder to do his dreams. He could not ignore the people who treated us like criminals based on a guess. This was the plan master. The other side was the villain thought that he would want to sleep at night. Thanks. No, it was annoying that other people apologized to him. The streamer would now be showing them all the stream's work, but before that he would like to introduce his compliances. The truth was finally being revealed. He was asking not to be rushed. He told everyone who came to help them. It was Maria and Alana. He told everyone that they would be puzzled and confused birthday with his Lord Streamer's fans. He was asked to cast the spell on. Maria told him that he should just focus on Lord Tumors. It did not matter to them as it would matter. It was right in front of them now. He just needed to hide the comments in the earth. The villain thought that there was a fog in his head. He could not focus on finding out who he was. His words there are stuck in his head was time for the main act. He called the sentence and told everyone that this was the thing, that the amount of mana a person has were based on the lights and colors of intensity. His shined with gold, so the amount of mana he had was ranked here, an infinite amount. In other words, the mana needed for his dreams. He equals supply all himself without anyone's help. He could prove it right now, but this method was too simplistic. The night before he decided to put the mana and prove that he had an infinite amount, asked if it was just said it was just a trick. But that was those two being there would help if they were there. Everyone would be convinced when it goes back to a creepy blank color. And when it shined like black, it goes to vibrant gold. It was almost like infinite. When I was trying to break out of the thing, it did not break this time. Something was wrong. It was floating away in the sky. He apologized to the girls and started running towards it. The people were confused as he went to the window. It was frightening to see as the thing was floating in the air. It was likely called an aurora. The overflowing mana went out of the thing and performed this miracle. Everyone had in their mind. It was not limited to just one country and spread to all others that Aurora Pro Streamer's infinite mana. However, he forgot one crucial point in the world of Aurora phenomena that doesn't exist. He messed up, in short, the villain. These were all lies he had taken from his slaves. In other words, they thought that the night sky was made by him. Lord thought that they were overreacting, while the people thought that he was streaming today as well. The boy thought that being this popular was an honor, but they could not let him sleep in the day. He had to keep moving every day. This divine miracle was amazing, the one he called an aurora. He wondered why they were crediting him all of a sudden. Those two were exhausted in a different sense, as everyone asked them what the Lord was like. He owed them a lot after this, so he should think of a way to thank them. It was time to go home and sleep for a bit. He's all group of people fighting over the Lord, and he thought that these kinds of sentiments and thoughts with the reason since Noble started all of that consequences. He realized his, before he was present he gave his fortune to his slaves. The royal lights found his, and without exiling him he made them admit to his wrong, doing it before being arrested. He offered this as his humble apology to everyone. He did not need any of this in person. After all, something might have happened to him, but the details are scars. He apologized and said that he had done a good job. It was an hour before the night arrived to make sure this does not happen again. The boy thought to all his listeners to be more in their judgment and to stop reacting, but it was for cause we needed to be more careful with how he dealt with things. He met Alfana now. He thought of what she was thinking. He asked if he was going to stop streaming. He told her that he was getting some weird attention, but he was going to continue doing streams as usual and make sure both his listeners enjoy them while hiding his identity. She was relieved as she was worried before she would support even more from now on. He was banking his room, and Mira was with him, asking for assistance. He asked her to go home. She would be retiring from her job as the crow. She was to guard him as she showed that she was made proud by her dad watching her from heaven. She finally went home from work. The boy wondered who the girl was and unemployed, where she was not his bodyguard, and she knew it. If he liked smaller guards, then she would be the best choice. It was oddly loud over there. This was a girl looking out from the building. He would be surprised that she took a break. It was time to take a small peek. The two girls met each other, and the flame was resolved, but it was just the start. From the on, he had become the center of attention. He would have to get even bigger. Reincarnation was a special word to him, and the one guiding Kaneda, blessing his future, watching him from heaven. The goddess was watching him the whole time, looking forward to his stream tonight. He thought of going home and getting ready while all the girls called out to Lord Kaneda.